What?
Happy Friday. Welcome to MedHeads. I'm Neil Vercel of MedCity News. I'm actually kind of filling in as guest host. A little last minute thing here because our boss, Chris Sepper, is on vacation this week, and the planned host, Stephanie Baum, has a little bit of a cold and no voice. So here I am discussing digital health startup investing, which is a little bit outside of my sweet spot as far as what I normally cover, but enough that they have confidence in me that I can get this done, so hopefully I won't let them down. My guests today on this week's edition of MedHeads are coming to us from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Dan Peterson, who leads a company called Tega. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Then I have there in the middle, in warm, sunny Phoenix, Arizona, I have Lucas Felt, runs the Medical Memory, another startup.
Hi, thank you.
And then our third guest is Stephen Kraus, who is in Boston. Uh, he's with Bessemer Venture Partners. I'm coming to you from Chicago, which is the site of MedCity Invest in April. Hopefully, we will see many of you there. Um, the two startups that I'm going to be talking to today are both going to be part of our startup showcase at MedCity Invest. Now, ironically, I'm in Chicago. The whole MedCity staff is coming to Chicago for MedCity Invest, and I'll be in Washington, D.C., and then Dallas later that week. So you guys won't get to see me, and I won't get to, hang out with you in my hometown. But anyway, we're here today not to talk directly about Invest, but about some of the issues related to Invest, and that's we're going to be looking at the startup landscape for the digital health for digital health companies. So, wanted to first of all, before I get into the questioning, want maybe each of you to tell us a little bit about your companies, and we can start with Dan.
Well, yeah, hi, Dan Peterson, TECA. We are in the space of addressing the kind of this global problem, antibiotic resistance. It's a huge problem. It's been growing. Our particular focus at this point is on hospitals, helping them improve antibiotic use. And the term that gets used is stewardship. So if you hear me talk about stewardship, it's the idea of how do we steward antibiotics? How do we maintain their use over time? How do we help hospitals do that? Briefly.
All right, Lucas, tell us about the medical memory.
Yeah, so the medical memory is a digital health solution concept that focuses on doctor-patient interaction and using mobile devices to capture those engagements, and has a HIPAA-compliant web platform for doctors and providers to interact, to share, to add notes, to increase the compliance and patient satisfaction, and help tell the patient's journey of care.
Okay, and so you more provider facing, but it's to help patients, but it's a provider facing product.
Yeah, we're trying to solve the inevitable question of what did the doctor say? And so being able to capture those interactions and then share those with family members and other care providers, we believe has significant impact in how patients achieve health.
Now, Stephen, you are an investment company. Your Bessemer Venture Partners is an investment company. Uh, what's your company's focus?
Yeah, well, great to be here with everyone. Hopefully we'll have a great conversation. Bessemer Venture Partners is a leading venture capital firm. We've been around for over 100 years and manage $5 billion of capital. But we focus, although we have a big fund, we focus primarily on early and growth stage companies all across any industry where there's great entrepreneurs and great innovation going on. But I focus specifically on healthcare and run our healthcare investment practice, and focus both on therapeutics and classic life science companies, but more prominently on healthcare IT and tech-enabled services companies in healthcare.
And Steve, I'd like to start the questioning with you. About looking at the investment landscape in healthcare. Last couple of years, I've seen a lot of investment in digital health companies. From your perspective, do you see that changing this year? Are we, have we passed the top of the Gartner hype cycle, or is there still a whole lot more to go? The types of companies you're
Yeah.
seeing changing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's hard to talk about healthcare and early stage healthcare companies without talking about the broader market. And obviously this week and the start of this year has been really, really rough for the public markets. And it looks, at least through the first month and a half, that public market investors are taking risk off. And when they take risk off in the market, that's tough for growth stage companies that are hoping.
That's due just to the general volatility of the stock market.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Bessemer Venture Partners, the software companies are off anywhere between 50, and some great companies like LinkedIn literally had their value cut in half, earlier this week. So I just want to always make sure that when we talk about healthcare and early stage and growth stage healthcare companies, while the industry that we operate in is a little bit counter-cyclical, in truth, these companies are their future, at least in terms of capital funding, and what guys like I do is tied to the broader public market. So we at Bessemer are still investing actively in early stage companies, and I'll turn to healthcare now, but we shouldn't lose sight of the broader market volatility as we talk about the early stage ecosystem that we operate in. That being said, I think in terms of digital health, we're very much in the first couple innings of what I think is a 9-inning ball game, right? I mean, there's been massive disruption in terms of the healthcare economy, and primarily it came from regulations, driven by regulation, both the HITECH Act and Obamacare, which is more formally known as PPACA, just created a wealth of opportunity. So yes, we've seen venture capital dollars invested in healthcare IT go from several $100 million 10 years ago per annum to last couple years, it's been $44 billion per annum. That's a massive increase in terms of the capital dollars chasing our sector. And I think, yes,
are a lot of these dollars just seeing the $3 trillion industry and thinking, hey, I got to cash in on this? Or do they truly have good strategies for tackling this very complex industry?
I mean, I think, of course, there's always money that chases bad ideas. That's true in any market. We're not insulated from that. We've all had our share of failures and bad ideas that we've chased, entrepreneurs, investors alike, public market investors, right? But I mean, if you think about, let's just look at the companies in our space that went public, because I think it's a precursor for opportunity of which I think there's a lot. Teladoc, Evolent, Castlight, Viva, these companies, while they've all been hit, their stocks are down anywhere from 20 to 50%. If you look at the spaces that they're chasing, Teladoc, telemedicine, Evolent, ACO transformation, Viva, bringing digitization to the pharma industry. I mean, these are massive opportunities, right? So you can take a sort of short-term view and say, wow, these stocks have really underperformed, or you can take a long-term view and say, do we think these are good places to be investing in as you look 5-10 years down the line? Absolutely they are, and I think there are many, many great opportunities behind them. So is $4 billion a lot? Yes, it is when you compare it to the past, but compared to a $3 trillion industry, I know there are a lot of great spaces that are still to be explored out there by entrepreneurs and investors alike.
Right. Okay, so turning to the two entrepreneurs, to Lucas and to Dan, where are startups like you looking for funding these days? Neither one of you can jump in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in. And let me just say, this isn't my normal appearance. I woke up 2 weeks ago with Bell's palsy. It's slowly getting better. That's why the right side of my face isn't moving. So I did this. This is my second company. I just want to contrast what happened last time. We started in 2000, and
I should just back up for a second and say that you were the first equity investment from Penn Medicine.
Yes, with this company. With this company. Let me just say briefly that in 2000, when I started my last company, we were looking for money, and we didn't get it before 2001. And then, as we all know, what happened with the market, exceedingly difficult to get money when the market, behaves when it goes in one of those cycles. So we wound up that time doing SBIR funding, and I'll come back to that. This time, I'll say it's awful lot easier to do a startup a second time because you have way more credibility with hiring staff and with getting talking to potential investors. We did an early project with Penn, and so Penn invested in us, and they are a minority shareholder. I didn't even want their money. I would rather have done it as a contract. I'm glad in retrospect that I took their money because they are a great partner, and they're even, they're way more committed now that they're a part owner. So that was a great thing. The other thing that we did was, we were out and we were showing things, and we met a potential partner who we kind of entered in discussions with, and we wound up, it's a company called Loom. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of Merck, and we did kind of an arrangement where they licensed our product over 3 years and paid us cash for that. So that's moved us to profitable at this point. We're not rolling in cash, but we have enough money to operate. So what we're doing now in terms of raising more money is we're kind of careful about it. We're going to take money for what we need, but it's a good position to be in.
Yeah, and as long as you've got the positive cash flow, you don't absolutely need to have the new VC right away. But of course, having the positive cash flow makes you more attractive.
Yep. Yeah, it feels very good.
Yeah. And how long have
We're not quite there.
Yeah.
I should ask that.
So our investment strategy is really kind of like any entrepreneur. We diagnosed a problem, we incubated our solution, and then went to our users, and we're able to get a good amount of funding to help us get going. We're post-revenue. We're not cash positive yet. We are actively looking for more, and that's coming.
You raised $2.1 million from Providence Venture Partners.
They came in. They were part of that.
They were
the majority of that has come from individual investors, private equity, and then Providence Venture out in Boston and Steve's neck of the woods. So with that, we were able to start really generating some good contracts, get a freemium model going. In 2015, we learned a lot of good things. We learned that patients want it. We have over an 89% opt-in rate for our service, that hospitals or that providers will use it. We've grown by 250% as far as bringing on new providers, and we've started to land large enterprise hospital contracts. And so it's been a good sort of learning process for us and validating process for us. So in 2016, what we're looking to do is to bring on the right amount of capital to help us expedite some of that growth. And we're looking from different areas.
2015, you were talking about the freemium model, proving the worth of the product. That's to build the user base.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have the user base, then you can start looking at generating more revenue.
Correct. And so now to do that, we're looking at partner channels. So we're really trying to maintain being scrappy. We do recognize that a lot of, certainly in this market space, it's all about a land grab. So we're now looking at making the right strategic sales channels to help expedite our growth. But then there's also, we're looking at either family offices or the right type of early stage venture partners to help us achieve our targets for this year and next.
Now, interesting that you should mention that. I've always held the belief, or I've had for a number of years, that direct-to-consumer doesn't really work in healthcare because healthcare is generally paid for by third parties, usually insurance companies. So, when people are given a bill, they expect somebody else to pay for it. And I know that, Stephen, you've publicly said that DTC stands more for death to company than direct-to-consumer.
Yes.
Yeah, and interestingly, you are an investor in Rock Health, which is an organization that I have been very critical of in the past, particularly when they introduced their very first class of incubation companies, of growth companies. That they were an accelerator, now they're more of an investor. They've pivoted quite a bit. They've also moved away from backing purely DTC companies, and now we're realizing that the revenue comes from the providers and the payers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I do believe that you know, healthcare is a industry where the actual payment of care is made by an enterprise and not a consumer. And I do believe that entrepreneurs who come into this industry need to understand and appreciate that. But that being said, the one point I'd make is that, you know, our industry has benefited from the best tech entrepreneurs who have maybe been successful in other industries coming into healthcare because, frankly, they want to do well and do good at the same time in their next foray, and actually bringing consumer-grade technology into our industry, right? So I do think there's a model where you can build consumer-grade technology and even pilot it in the hands of consumers. But ultimately, you have to couple that with a monetization and go-to-market strategy that is delivered through the enterprise, because they are, as you said, the ones who pay for healthcare. And just to go full circle to Rock Health, I think one of the things that I give Rock Health a ton of credit for is that they've been a real brand builder and flag carrier for our industry, and for, you know, getting interest among Silicon Valley in healthcare. And I think they do a good job of now holding the hands of first-time entrepreneurs who come from tech into healthcare, helping them understand that nuance, and also introducing them to a lot of enterprises who are interested in, you know, consumer-grade technology disrupting, you know, the business of healthcare.
Either of the entrepreneurs want to add anything to that? Anything that you learned the hard way?
Well, at first we had a patient payment model, so we were going direct to consumers, and I think it was challenging. We did have a difficult time in achieving real market growth. When we moved to making it a more solution and value-based for providers, that's where we've seen, and in 2015 we saw the growth that we were hoping to see. So I certainly agree with the fact that it's providers and it's enterprise systems is where you're going to get the biggest market adoption and the best way to really see significant growth numbers. For us, we have a very patient-centric side. So we do spend time making sure that we're helping market our product as more of an information that it's out there and it's available to drive sort of an organic growth or awareness to patients. But as far as who our customers are and who we're paying or who's paying for the service, it's very much providers and enterprise healthcare systems.
Yes, it sounds like you're in a good position too, in that you know, providers have to look at patient satisfaction. They also have to look at you know, making sure that patients do remember what's told of them, because now that in the world that's moving toward value-based purchasing, we're going to be looking at outcomes.
Correct.
Yeah, I'll just say that we are focused on personalizing antibiotic therapy, but at this point, the doctor is still writing the script. So the person that, you know, we're kind of selling to our user is physicians on the front line. However, even physicians on the front line, particularly when they're working in the hospital, aren't buyers. So we wind up selling to hospitals. That's who we have to sell to.
Gotcha. Now, turning back to the investment world, you know, what do you see right now realistic options for raising capital? You know, what might be easier now than it used to be? What might be more difficult now? And, you know, what do you think of different investment sources such as crowdfunding, angel investors, traditional VC, you know, grants?
Well, let me jump in because I've done SBIRs before. That worked very well for us in the early 2000s because, you know, the investment world was silent in 2002, early 2003. And it gave us a lot of credibility. When you get money from NIH, people look at it and go, oh, that's a stamp of approval.
Absolutely.
That said, I would never do it again. It was way too much work for the amount of money I got. And, you know, it took a year, and I mean, there's just horror stories. So I would not do it again, but it worked. This time, I keep talking because we are profitable, but I keep talking to angels. I've had a few discussions. I've pitched places with VCs. The challenge there is they're often so focused on the bottom line and how they can make the most money, and I wouldn't be in healthcare if that's what I wanted to do. We've talked to family offices. They're hard to get in the front door of, but they tend to be, they're a focus more on wealth preservation. So they look at, are you a really solid bet? They aren't trying to score, a huge win in the long run. So we keep talking to all those, but they haven't taken money yet.
Sorry about that. For us, I've kind of had a different experience as far as Arizona has done a good job in recognizing the need for state funding activities, especially for entrepreneurs. And so we were recent winners of the Arizona Innovation Challenge, which provided $250,000 in non-dilutive capital, which is always the best capital. There's also other programs that we're involved in as well. So that being able to be in a active community that's supporting that and gets you out in investors, those are good validating points, and it's also great for our bottom line and helping us grow. Family offices and VCs, I think what's been difficult for where we're at is it's not that the interest isn't there, but the expectation of connecting that line from patient satisfaction to hard ROI has changed. When we were at the JP Morgan event and the conversations that we've had, and a lot of it was, well, show me the proof points that this is going to deliver X. Show me the proof points that it's going to deliver Y. I think for the market today, what we've seen is instead of things being really interesting and what could be, it's now saying, all right, that's cool, come back to us once you have hard data. For us, our challenge is drawing that line because everybody can sort of see the intrinsic benefit for patients. But what does that mean? Are you going to see improved compliance? Are you going to see improved adherence? All of the metrics that now hospitals and the people who back those hospitals or those revenue streams care about. It's not that we can't, and it's not that entrepreneurs can't do them. Those aren't going to be achieved. It's just taking a little bit longer. Family offices have been supportive. We've had some good opportunity in getting in front of them. I think a lot of that has to do with our product is immediately relatable to people. So people kind of take that on from an emotional value, and I think that's really been a benefit for us in getting in front of people. But again, now it comes down to the proof points.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point by Lucas. I think this point of sort of show me the money, and what I mean by that is sort of show me the ROI. The reason that investors focus on that is because if you look at healthcare versus other industries where software is sold into, the time to acquire a customer in healthcare is just longer. It takes longer. And there's good reasons for that. There's obviously HIPAA concerns, there's privacy concerns, there's regulatory concerns, there's obviously just the concern that if I right to my patients, there's workflow challenges, right, in terms
Absolutely.
of integrating with the different systems and in changing doctors' behavior. So I think the sales cycles in healthcare are long. Now the good news is once you've landed a customer in healthcare, they tend to be very sticky. For the same reason it took a long time, it's hard to get your software integrated into the workflow. It's also hard to rip it out. So we see that lifetime value of customers in healthcare is a lot longer than in other industries. So it goes back to Lucas's point, which is why investors ask about ROI, is because anything you can do to show a more compelling ROI decreases that time in terms of a sales cycle. And so that's why investors like myself focus on that, because you want to be able to see that the payback period on dollars invested in sales and marketing is reasonable, and not, some companies in healthcare, I just did the analysis, have, it takes, 3 years to pay back your sales and marketing dollars, and that's a really tough investment to make.
Okay, so
Yeah, let me just.
go ahead.
Yeah, before we leave ROI, there's another level, I call it frustration, but with the previous company, we did, we're back in the same industry, and we showed with our first client that for about $100,000 a year they were paying us, they were saving $2 million in direct antibiotic expenditures, which come out of the bottom line of the hospital. And we thought, man, this is, we've hit a gold mine here because hospitals are going to snarf this up. And interestingly, it was still hard for hospitals to decide to make that decision, even staring that ROI in the face. Now, granted, that was 13, 14 years ago when they weren't so driven by financials. Now they look at it and they go, that is really attractive. But it's funny now I'll tell that story to a prospective investor now, and they'll say, well, kind of show me again that that works, that you've done it this time again. And I'm like, you know, I've got the best people from my last company and from my previous arch competitor in this company. We can deliver. And they still go like, yeah, but show me you've done it.
You hired away from your competitor.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, yes. Took the best people we could find, and they were eager to join. And, yeah, it's one of the benefits of doing it a second time and knowing everybody in our niche of the industry.
Okay. Now, want to go back to Stephen for a second. You did address it a little bit, but you know what gets your attention as an investor?
You know, I mean, it's pretty simple. I would say, I don't mean that. When I say that, I mean ROI. But you know, you start with great entrepreneurs who are, who captivate, your imagination and excite you, or sort of ignite your soul in terms of working with them, right? I mean, because after all, it is a marriage. I mean, that's often used, but you are working with someone for 5 to 10 years, and so you for sure better respect that person and know that you're going to work together well through good times and bad, because these startups are ups and downs, right? I've been, they're a huge emotional roller coaster. So that's number one, and that to me is the most important. And then I would say in Bessemer, we try to be pretty thesis driven, and I can tell you later on about some of the areas that we're looking to invest in. Fee for value transition from fee for service to fee for value, the consumerization of healthcare. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we have certain views on, to use Wayne Gretzky's terminology, you want to skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it is currently. And so we have some visions of how we think healthcare will play out in the future, and we're looking for great entrepreneurs who are going after some of those ideas. That's not to say that every deal we do is quote-unquote on roadmap. We often find great entrepreneurs who are pursuing something that we never thought of. But we do have some sort of theses that we're trying to pursue over the next couple of years in terms of where we think the industry is headed.
Okay. Dan, I want to ask you one question specifically. Now, last week on MedHeads, we looked at the investment climate in the Midwest. And, that generally looked at the big industrial cities in the Midwest, although it also included, I think, Nashville, Dallas, really anybody in the central time zone, but also, in the Great Lakes area. So obviously Chicago, Minneapolis, those are big hubs. But how does a company like yours in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, get the attention of the investors who tend to be on the coasts or in the big cities?
They're all there skiing, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Wait till they come here.
Good answer. Yeah.
It's funny. We do have a very active investment group. There's a lot of money in Jackson Hole, and I gave a presentation just before Christmas and include former Vice President Cheney. Not that he's particularly an investor, but I mean, there's a lot of big names who come through town or stay here or visit. So
you also got the attention of people at Penn in Philadelphia.
Right. No, so I mean, I think it's it's a different world. We're an entirely virtual company. There's 2 of us in Jackson Hole, but we're spread from Cape Cod to California. I mean, and we're incredibly effective despite being virtual. In fact, we're way more effective than we were in my last company, all in one office. So I think it's a new world, and it's not hard for other people to understand that as well.
Okay. All right. Now, every week on MedHeads, as we get to the end, we go around the horn and ask people for what they thought the most interesting story to them in healthcare innovation of the week was. So why don't I start with Lucas?
Yeah, the doctor's article about medical malpractice.
Company, the malpractice insurance.
Right. It came out yesterday, sort of looking at what are the top reasons why you see medical malpractice lawsuits happen. Certainly for us, the inevitable question of what if I say something wrong, we're always surrounded by those questions. And what's interesting is that when you look at what do doctors have right now that keeps them if they did say something wrong, there's nothing. There's not a lot of protection on the doctor side. But when you look at patients forget up to 80% of what a doctor tells them, there's a lot of opportunity for just miscommunications, poor recall, poor memory, and depending on what those outcomes are like, that can be frustrating for family members and for patients. So it's not surprising that there are these issues that exist. I think one of the things that was interesting was the level of communication was brought up and bringing some light into how things are communicating and how those things from the patient side and the doctor side could be addressed to improve that. Because there's another study that shows when patients like their doctor and they feel like they've been communicated to, they sue less. So I thought that article was good to bring up a lot of those things, but really highlighting the impact that good communication has on decreasing the amount of medical malpractice lawsuits.
All right, Dan?
So just the background to this is the huge thing that's happening in our field is the Obama administration started a couple years ago the process of making it, essentially it's going to become regulations in 2017 or maybe 2018 for hospitals to have full-fledged programs to address antibiotic resistance. And they did this 10 years ago, and our previous company, our sales skyrocketed when they did that infection prevention. This week, with the budget, proposed budget that he's put out, there's $877 million in the budget specifically to address antibiotic resistance issues. And it's a further commitment by this administration that this is a huge problem facing all of us. But this is a completely bipartisan issue. I mean, nobody wants us to die of bugs and our antibiotics not working. So, I mean, this is just another step in what we see as the kind of attention this thing needs, and it's going to do the same thing it did 10 years ago in infection prevention. It's going to make the market go crazy for us, and that's a great thing.
Thank you. And Stephen, what was your story of the week?
Well, I mean, I think that one of the most well-funded companies out there over the last couple of years in the healthcare space is Zenefits. And this week, obviously, it was revealed that they had serious compliance issues. And you add that and couple that on top of the whole Theranos story that has been getting a lot of attention and actually great reporting by the Wall Street Journal. You know, the thing that I worry about is that, you know, an N of 2 is going to be used to sort of brand a scarlet letter on all entrepreneurs pursuing, you know, healthcare. And I really hope that we don't overreact. There, you know, 99.999% of entrepreneurs I meet with are doing things exactly the right way, right? I do think this points to the two challenges. One is that, you know, entrepreneurs who raise money at high valuations, probably ones that are lofty, have high expectations and a lot of pressure to meet those valuations. And as we talked about, healthcare is not an industry where it's easy to hyperscale. I don't care what Silicon Valley and technology entrepreneurs think. It is a slow, methodical industry, one where you can build tremendous value over long term, but you cannot hyperscale. And the worst thing you can't do is violate regulations. That being said, I really do applaud Zenefits' new CEO, David Sachs, in the way that he's handled it. It is completely opposite to the way that it feels like the Theranos team has handled it. He has been open, transparent. He sent letters to his team saying, we did wrong. We've terminated the folks, including the founder, who did wrong. Compliance is our oxygen. We have to live. We have to have it to live. I think it's exactly the right way to handle a situation like this. It's really commendable, and I hope that it will show that Zenefits still can be a great company for healthcare and in healthcare.
Okay, thank you. And for me, the most interesting story of the week, I think, was a report from the California Healthcare Foundation written by the always insightful Jane Saracen-Kahn, looking at how digital health can actually be a boon for the healthcare safety net. But it has to be, you know, targeted to the right people. So a lot of things that might work for a general population may not work for low-income people, such as smartphone apps. It might be easier to engage somebody over the web or through email or through text messaging, for example, or, you know, come up with something that you know, works in multiple languages, because a lot of low-income people are immigrants with low English skills. I'm tripping over the language myself as I'm trying to get that out.
We have an interpreter on the line, so just
appreciate that. So anyway, I wanted to thank our guests for this lively conversation about investing. I want to remind you to sign up for MedCity Invest April 12th, 13th in Chicago. It's going to be held at a new venue, the Four Seasons Hotel right off of Michigan Avenue.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, and of course I won't be here for that.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'll be around all over the eastern half of the country, except for here that week. So, thank you to our guests, Dan Peterson from TECA in Jacksonville, Wyoming.
Yep.
Lucas Felt at the Medical Memory out in Phoenix, where it's
Thank you very much.
80 degrees today, I understand.
It's a balmy 89 degrees, I believe.
Well, 89 degrees. I'm sorry. We're at about 15 in Chicago right now, and going down. And also to Stephen Kraus in Boston with Bessemer Venture Partners.
Yeah, I'm freezing here, but I had a blast. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I'm Neil Vercel from MedCity News. Thanks for joining us. And as always, all of our MedHeads broadcasts are archived on the event page and also on our YouTube page. Thank you.
Thank you.